Hello guys, if you would like access to my $5 in-depth Valorant competitive fundamentals course, you can find that in my Patreon. The link is at the very top of the description below. Enjoy the video guys, peace. Hey guys, today I'm going to be giving you some in-depth chamber tips, right? So chamber, in my opinion, is still one of the absolute strongest agents in the game, and that is for a good reason. I'm going to be talking about these tips in descending order from most important to least important. So if you want to know what the most important parts about Chamber's kit are, you can start with the very first one, which is going to be right here. Okay guys, so the first ability, which is the most important aspect of Chamber's, kit and just overall abilities, is going to be his TPs. So we're going to be talking about first on defense, mainly because defensive TPs are going to be much more intuitive, much easier overall than attacking. So if you're a Chamber player and you attack, you probably understand that putting TPs down is kind of awkward. Like, you don't really know all the time where to put your TPs. Like, where's the best time? Should I wait to put my TPs? That's what we're going to be talking about. But first, let's talk about defense, okay? So what you want to understand is you're going to have your first TP that you're going to put down before the round starts pretty much always, okay? So these spots would include somewhere on this line. So right here would be a good one. Somewhere in U-Haul, behind truck, behind triple, or back site. So you notice that all these spots are kind of on the same line, right? They're all on the same line, which means you're TPing back the same distance. Yesterday I coached someone that TP'd all the way back to here, and in my opinion this is kind of passive. Unless you're opping and you think that the enemy team is going to push like really hard, then you can put a TP back here, but make your default TPs to go back to like on these, okay? So let's say that I'm going to TP to back truck. Again, I'm a big advocate of playing aggressively with TPs, so that's what I'm going to show you guys here. I'm going to teach you guys something called limit testing, and basically what this means is to basically just see what you can get away with early on in each game that you play, right? So a new game that you play, you're playing against new enemies most of the time, and you don't really know how they're going to play. So, for example, put this TP down. You have your TP already set back there because that's what you're always going to put down first. And then you're going to go for an aggressive play like this, just because as long as you're in this circle, you're completely safe, right? You hit E, you're completely safe, unless they hit a crazy shot on you, which is probably not going to happen. So we wait for one, we find one, we get a kill, we get out, and we're safe because we're chamber, right? And then now we're in a really good spot because we're not all the way back here, we're not all the way back here. We're relatively close to site. We can come into U-Haul, or we can chill like this, watch showers, right? You can wait for your other TP to cool down again. But basically now, if we've gone for this aggressive of a play up here, it worked, then we know that we can get away with aggressive plays. If you do this, like first round or second round with your sheriff, and you get one-tapped, then be more cautious. That's the idea behind limit testing, okay? And another thing I want to talk about on defense real quick is basically just understand that you can, again, you can place it here or you can place it here. It's really up to you. But what I'm trying to explain here is that you really want to swap up where you put your TPs, right? I showed the example of here and here for the first one, but you should not always do that, right? You should swap it up. So now maybe you want to peek showers and peek like this, and then we just hold this, right? Hold and wait, or we take a fight, TP back, and now we're here, right? So now we can defend short from here, or we could have TP'd back to here. Basically, my point is just swap it up, be unpredictable, catch the enemies off guard with your TPs with aggressive plays. Again, you could go over to B. I'm not going to show you guys all of B site. One more little cool trick you can do is TP between sites using this TP here, and place TP right here in cubby. So this is useful if you want to place a trip, say, on B site or on A site, and then TP back before the round starts, or just to have this TP to like fast rotate, right? Because this is just really nice. You probably want to put it a little further back so you're safe whenever you TP, but this is a really nice TP for binds specifically. Anyways, let's go ahead and move on to attack, guys, with TPs. So moving on to using TPs on attack, it's going to be a little bit more awkward, a little bit harder, as I kind of mentioned in the last section. So I'm moving over to B site to kind of give you a different idea as to, just how to use this on attacking B site here. So first of all, I think a big mistake people make on attack with chamber is they put chamber's TPs way too far back, right? So this is obviously going to vary from game to game, with team to team. So for example, if your team is really bad at pushing, you are probably going to want to put TPs a little bit farther back. But if your team is good at pushing together and taking site together, then you don't want to put your TP this far back, mainly because you see the farthest forward we can put our second TP is in hookah. This is really bad. Another example of this would be right here. So I'm sure a lot of you actually do put your TP right here, but this isn't necessarily bad. But as you can see, you actually cannot put your second TP in elbow or close here. So this is often where a lot of chambers will want to push up to hold an aggressive angle and then TP back. So I would recommend trying to get your TPs as far forward as possible. And again, if your team is just not good at pushing, then you can settle for a TP like this that's a bit farther back. But if you can, you really want to try to get farther forward. You can put a TP Let's see how forward we have to be. This is pretty good, like behind here. You do want to be careful about getting TP'd though. Getting TP'd on. So for long, this TP would be too far back, right? Because as you can see, you really can't put a TP anywhere on site. The farthest you're going to be able to go is like sitting in hookah or in garden or yeah, hookah. You can't go elbow. So that's the equivalent of, you know, the one farther back that we just mentioned. Here, this is actually pretty good. This is pretty good. So this is actually where I'd recommend you guys put your TP. Because as you can see, you can get pretty much all the way up to here, or in sight, or in elbow, right? And you can just, this is safe. This is a pretty safe place to TP back to, unless you're getting flanked long, which hopefully you're going to have a trip anyway, somewhere. But, right, let's say we put a TP here, and then I'll show you guys how I'd play this, right? So you can put a TP like this. This is how you see a lot of chambers playing in higher ranks, right? Like, they want to be up close. They want to get up close and personal, get the first fight, and because they know that they can just TP back and be safe. And they're in a completely advantageous spot to be long right here, right? Or you can put a TP right here. This is another good spot. Whatever your preference is. Remember, there's variations, right? So for hookah, you could put one here, you could put one here. You could probably even go for like this, honestly. But just try to swap it up. Try to think like, what can I do different here with my TPs? But that's the main thing on attack that I feel like people really struggle to understand, is just like you need to make space first. You can't expect your TPs to make space for you. Again, if your teammates suck at pushing and you guys aren't really going in together, then that's when you can settle for more like passive TPs. But understand, where you excel as a chamber player is forward, because you have TPs that are just broken and they get you out of jail for free, okay? So keep that in mind, guys. Hopefully this makes sense. If you have any other questions, comments, or concerns about using TPs on attack, let me know. So let's go ahead and talk about trips now. I would consider trips to be probably the next most important thing. I mean, obviously the ops really important and the sheriff's really important, but I feel like those are more straightforward to kind of give you guys tips for. The trips for chamber, or the trip for chamber, is just going to be a little bit more of a conceptual kind of learning thing. So for attack, you really want to make sure that you're tripping your flank. The most annoying trip to deal with is like right here, whenever you're a defender and you're trying to flank. So I would suggest putting a trip there. You know, so that's the main trip you're going to put on attack, honestly. Like, this is probably where you're almost always going to put your trip, just because it's so good for both directions. Whenever you're defending, I feel like this is actually interestingly where chambers and lower ranks, or just chambers in general, don't really put the greatest trips. So realize that, again, you could put a trip like this, but the alternative to this trip would be putting it in this corner. I know that there's a barrier here, but if you are defending here anyway, you might settle to put your trip there, because the advantage of this one compared to this one is that this one sees them sooner, right? So, like, if I'm walking up here, this is going to spot them sooner. This trip is good, but it's good to see them sooner, right? Like, if you know they're walking down short and nobody's holding this, this could be good. Also, don't trip where you're going to watch. So, if you're going to watch right here, don't put a trip here, right? Because, like, what's the point? If you die, then this is going to go down. Like, don't stack up, right? If you're, especially, like, think about if you're alone on A site. If you're alone on A site, you want to have either showers tripped and then you watch short, or trip short and then you watch showers. So again, for example, a good trip could be right here or right here, but a better trip would be wait for the barrier to come down and then trip right here. So let's say the best possible setup if you're playing A and you want to watch short is wait for this to drop, put a trip there, come back short, maybe you have a TP that goes up here or up here, and then hold short. Why? Because they can't come into showers without you knowing, unless they smoke it like an absolute cringe lord, okay? And then we don't have to worry about showers, even if we don't have a teammate with us, right? Because we're just safe. Whereas if we put this trip instead, you know, our showers is just completely open, because chamber only has one trip, and you guys really want to just kind of be aware of that, okay? So, again, understand the difference between, like, a trip like this and like this. You don't always have to put a trip deep, but, you know, there are opportunities for you guys to do that on pretty much every location. You guys will just sit behind the barrier. This might only be good for certain situations as well, like, you know, if they're pushing up long a lot, you might opt for this trip instead of, like, this trip or this trip. But the problem with a trip like this, right, is that enemies can just peek before they're even spotted by the trip. So if your teammate's, like, sitting over here thinking that the trip is watching them, which would be kind of silly, right, for them to do that. But, you know, a trip up like this or this is going to be much better for you guys. So hope that makes sense. Try to get information earlier is basically the overall takeaway here. And for here, you know, I think this is pretty fine. You could put one under hookah. This is pretty fine. You don't really need to put one over there. Right here is pretty good. So yeah, Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the next step. Okay, guys, so now I'm going to be briefly mentioning the benefits of a chamber sheriff and a chamber op over the normal sheriff and the normal op, because they are worth mentioning just briefly. And then I'm going to be talking about how you can combine those two weapons of chambers with his TPs, because that's really important to kind of understand how those kind of mesh together, right? So basically, the main benefits of the sheriff is that you pull it out faster and you can shoot with it faster. So if we pull this out and shoot, you can also scope faster, I believe, than like, I mean, obviously you can't scope with a normal sheriff, but if we pull it out here, shoot really fast. Compared to this, it takes significantly longer, right? Yeah, so that's a big thing, right? Because, you know, say you run out of ammo and someone's pushing you, you pull this out and you can just instantly spam them. Like, it's really strong. The ADS is also nice. It's basically the same ADS as a Guardian. There are 8 bullets instead of 6 to the normal sheriff. And basically the benefits are similar for the op. So the op's pullout is much quicker than a normal op, which means you can shoot quicker, which is really good, right? A good op player can absolutely destroy with that. So yeah, and I also believe that the scope is a little bit quicker, right? So that makes specifically the chamber op extremely useful and extremely strong. So understand those and understand that you can get away with pulling these weapons out really fast and using them. Other than that, now I want to talk about using specifically the TP with Chamber's weapons, right? So obviously everyone knows that Chamber cannot belong here, but you want to make sure that you're really combining TPs with this, right? So if you're not doing this, you're missing out. You're heavily missing out, okay? So I actually want to go over to A short again, just to kind of show off what you can do with the sheriff as well, because I feel like a lot of people don't take full advantage of Chamber's sheriff aggressively. Right, so these are the same 2 TPs we did at the very start, and now we're going to be talking about Chamber's sheriff. So say it's pistol round, we bought as many shots as we can, probably about 5 shots. You walk up, and you can just hold, right? So this is opposed to not using Chamber's sheriff at all and just using, like, I don't know, a classic or something, which you obviously don't want to do. You have this insane gun that's just going to allow you to get away with free kills, right? Another thing you can do with Chamber's TP is you can TP up onto high ground early, like this, right? And, you know, you could take this away even, but I would recommend not doing that, just so you can get out. But this is good because you can do this before the round starts. It doesn't use a TP, and again, this is mainly good for an op. You can play up here without an op, but I would recommend with the op. You can even use a sheriff if it's like earlier on in the game and people don't really have weapons. So, you know, think about different ways you can combine his TPs with these weapons and understand how strong these weapons compared to their normal, you know, their normal versions. So yeah, so hopefully this video was helpful, guys. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments down below, and, you know, leave me also video guide ideas in the comments, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace, guys.